everyone. We're going to be starting the stream soon. We're just waiting for a couple of more viewers to join. Until then, hi again. In case you joined the IoT session, welcome back. In case you didn't, welcome. I'm Prithvi. I'm a new coach, and I'll be leading this new mini event called Art+Technology. So we're going to be doing some really fun, really simple blend of art and technology. And good. So I'm gonna quickly go turn my camera off and make sure my workspace is visible to you all. But until then, if you guys have access to it and you guys can get some wires, some LEDs, great. If not, feel free to follow along later. But what we're basically gonna do is let me show you what we're gonna build today. Something like this. So we're gonna build something like this, an LED pendant, right? Something with beads and technology. So this is an LED sculpture, very simple LED sculpture. We'll see how we can also design it from scratch. I also have a lot of LED colors waiting for you all. So we're gonna, let you guys decide what color we use. And we're gonna start from scratch. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the wire, the tools. I'm gonna walk you through all the tools you need to, get this thing going. And before that, though, before we get started, let's walk through the check-in process once, in case you guys are wondering. So you can see on the screen, you can check in, register and check in if you're joining this live stream at the URL mentioned. If you guys want, I can put it in the chat. Let me know if you do need it. Let me get rid of the banner. All right. Awesome. So, do you guys by any chance need a walkthrough of how to check in, where the check-in form is? If so, let me know. I'll quickly walk you through the process. If not, we can dive right in. So, I'm looking at the comments. I see no one needs it. So, in case you do, I'll walk through in the end. We have around it's a very short content. We have around 25 minutes of what we're gonna do. So, let's get started. Right, so I'm going to go off air and make sure my workspace is visible. So give me just 1 minute to do that. All right. Okay, great. So we're ready to go. I'm hoping you guys don't have an echo. All right. All right, I think there should be no echo now, and you guys should be hear me. You should be able to hear me clearly. As soon as I get a heads up, we're ready to go. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so let me go on stream as well. Okay, good. So I showed you what we're going to be building today. It's going to be quite simple. I'll show you how the designing process works. I'm also going to show you some of my favorite artists who do so much more with the electronic art concept. Most of you might already be aware of them. And I'm going to introduce you to a community that is meant for hardware enthusiasts. So great, let's get started right in. So let me very quickly walk you through the tools. Let me know if the stream isn't very clear. I'll make my camera go off stream and only the workspace will be visible. All right, awesome. Okay, so first of all, we'll be needing wires, right? So let's talk a little bit about the wires available. Okay, so I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm based out of India and I can talk about the problems I had while finding the right wire in India. So if you go to a normal hardware or electronics shop, you will get this kind of a wire. So if it's more clearly visible here, I'll show you. You get this kind of a wire here. So this is a great wire in terms of conductivity. If you're going to wrap things around or you're going to use copper tape, this is a great way to go about it. But if you're going to solder, this is absolutely not solderable. So if they're going to give you this thick copper wire, do not take it. The wire that you want is this, right? It's a brass wire, all right? And this wire is solderable. So a good place to start looking for the wire in the first place is not the electrical shops or the hardware shops, but rather the metal fabricators. They have a very good idea of the wires. They have an amazing variety available. And yeah, so this is about India. I honestly cannot tell about any other places, but I think if you have access to Amazon.com, they have some great buyers. If you are ordering online, make sure that it's non-enameled. Enameled wires do not conduct. Yes, copper also works. So yeah, I'll show you both the wires that I have. So I usually use a selection of wires mixed with brass, copper. The reason I use brass is because it's slightly, it gets heated slightly lesser than copper. Once it's heated, it's as good as copper, but slightly less. And it looks better, you know, it's got a nice, even if when it rusts, it's got a nice rusty feel to it. Yeah, brass wires, copper wires, both work. I usually use both. The reason I'm choosing brass today is because it's easier to confuse copper wire and get the wrong copper wire, but you won't make that mistake with brass because electrical people don't keep brass wires. So if you go looking for a brass wire, there's a high chance you're gonna find the right wire in the first shop. So once you find the right shop, then you can get copper wire there as well. Right, so again, if you're buying online, make sure you're buying non-enameled conductive wires. Usually if you put STEM or science or engineering, you get the right wires, but online also, another observation, online they're slightly expensive. So if you can find a local shop, a local fabricator, that'll be great. All right, so the next tool you're gonna need are the pliers, right? So I usually use standard pliers that are available, right? So this is the cutter, all right? And this is basically to bend and straighten the wires. We mostly use it to straighten the wires because we want nice, short, straight wires cut when we're using the small pieces. All right, so the next thing that you really need, and I would honestly suggest you guys to keep, is a set of tweezers, a pair of tweezers. They're really useful, especially if you're using SMD components. In case you guys aren't aware of what's an SMD component, an SMD component is a surface mount device. So let me give you an example. This are red LEDs. These are through-hole LEDs. So basically they have these long legs that you can use with a zero PCB. This is a zero PCB. The PCB with these metal, already metaled one side and not metaled one side, these are called zero PCBs. So these terms are helpful if you're, going out searching for the right things. These wires are jumper wires, and this is a coin cell holder that we won't be needing today. All right, so these are just components that you need to be aware of. So you see these small holes in the PCB. This is where these components go. This side is where you keep the circuit, and this is where you solder the circuit. So it's nice and neat. Another example of that would be, so here you go, the button and the LED is soldered to the top, and the wiring and the actual shortening happens at the back. This is kind of my experimental PCB, so it's super messy, but you can make it a lot more artistic. Alright, so the LEDs I showed you, these are through-hole LEDs and these are SMD LEDs. Let me see if my workspace can help you see them better. So these usually come in these kind of packaging, right? And if you're going to really go all the way and make this, I completely suggest using an SMD LED. They're very difficult to work with, which is why I won't be working with them on SMD on the live stream, because I have a camera right here and it is difficult to work. But otherwise, there you go. So this is how tiny the LED is. Let me see if I can show you. So there you go. Alright, so this is how tiny the LED is, and you can see there's an arrow pointing towards its cathode and anode. Waiting for it to stabilize. Okay, so now you know what's an SMD LED. These also get lost very easily, so avoid using them until and unless you're okay. Also, safety first. Always have gloves. These are not the ideal gloves, but because I've gotten used to it, these works. But if you're working for the first time, make sure you have thicker gloves. All right. Next component that you need is a soldering gun. So I am using a standard soldering gun that you find in any electrical shops. You don't need. It does not have to have a temperature control. It does not need anything but just some power, right? Next is soldering method. Now this is where things might get tricky, right? So if right, this is a great question. Beading wire works, but it depends on what kind of beading wire you use, right? Most beading wires though are non-enameled. Although I have observed that some of the beadathon wires are non-enameled, so you might want to have a look at them. But again, if you're ever going shopping for the first time for wire, definitely go in person. Once you understand the terms that are locally used, you can shop online, and that's what I do, right? Another alternative to wire is copper tape. So here is some copper tape in different sizes. This is very easily available. So if you're starting for the first time and you're just getting hang of things, try using copper tape, especially if you're using enameled wire, right? You can just tape a little bit of copper and you're good to go. It's slightly easier to use, especially if you're not used to soldering or you don't want to, invest in soldering guns. So that's a great way to go about it too. Whatever I solder, you guys can use copper tape is how the equivalent of soldering works, and whatever I use for wire, if you're using a copper tape as an alternative to that, is you just use a copper tape in place of the wire. So that's how simple it is. All right, any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Great, so let's get started. Right, we were done to talk about soldering metals. So let me just walk you through a couple of soldering metals that are available. So this is this. There is one which is the green color one, which is the best kind in terms of environmental sustainability points. So this is lead free. If you're using it for jewelry, if you're using it for anything that's going to come in contact with humans a lot, like earrings and stuff, always use this. It by standards, all your electronics and anything that comes in contact is supposed to be lead free. So definitely do that. This is a one which is not lead free. This is purple, you can see that. But the reason I use this is first, the circuit I'm going to make is not going to be worn, first of all. And secondly, this one is a lot easier to work with because this has high flux. So when you go looking for a soldering metal, make sure it's high flux. And yeah, so it's high flux. It's got a lot more zinc in it. This has a high zinc content, which is why it's easier to use. Another type of soldering metal that you will find that is a very, that's really nice to use is this kind of thing. You can see it's very thick, right? This is usually used for stained glass. So if you go online, search for stained glass metal, this is the kind you'll get. And this again has a very high amount of zinc. So it's a lot easier to work with. But again, you cannot use it for wearables. You need to use lead-free for wearables. And if you're going to use this metal, the soldering gun that I'm using won't work. You'll need a higher temperature soldering iron in which you can also have some temperature control because it needs slightly higher temperatures and voltages to work. So a good example of that would be a high duty soldering gun, something like this. So this one, if you see, has a ceramic heater button here that heats up for 30 seconds really high on high temperatures and then cools back down very quickly, thus also preventing any burns that might happen, right? Okay, great. Let's get started. Another very important component that we'll be using a lot is the flux. Okay. Now flux is available like this in gel form and also in liquid form. If you can get in liquid form, it's much better. It's a lot easier to work with. It's much more hassle-free in terms of cleaning. But this is also great if that's what. So this is what we'll find locally in India more. That is why I use this. But I think online everything's available. So even in India, you can get some liquid flux anywhere. Shizuka, that's a great question. I mean, I'm sorry I can't help you circuit-wise, but if you want, you can open up Tinkercad and make the circuit with me. Else, recently, one of the community members, MLH community members, introduced me to a really cool website called Weave Silk. Let me see if I can search that for you. And there you go. So in case you just want to practice some digital art along, this is where you should be able to follow along with me. Yep, and that's a great suggestion too by Circuit Dusty Cheese Fries, the circuitlab.com. You can follow along with the circuit there. But the real fun in the art event is really just playing around with the wires and working with shapes, right? So the shape that I showed you was a triangle. That was just me experimenting the first circuit that I made. So I'm going to show you how you also design, right? So a good idea is always to take a sticky note pad. That's how I work because it's easier to just stick it to the surface and it won't move when you're cutting things. So you first take a sticky note pad, then it's a nice idea to grab a pencil or a pen, whatever you're comfortable with, and draw the circle. Draw the shape that you're wanting, you really want to make. So in our case, any suggestions? Do you want me to make a triangle again? Do you want me to make a square, a hexagon? Any suggestions? If not, I'm probably going to go for a square. All right, let's go for a square then. It's a lot easier to work with, and there are enough joints for you to solder. Okay, so this is my outer circuit. That is, this can be a random shape, but what I usually try and do is I try and make it the size of the battery. So the next thing what we're going to do is once we have the circuit created, is I'm going to take the battery, keep it in the center, and make sure that it kind of fits it, right? So we're going to take the battery, draw around it. Right? So now our square should have maximum of this boundary. Let me know if it's not visible to you very clearly. I'll adjust the lighting. Oh, how complicated the design can be. I'll show you how amazingly complicated the design can be. You can use 555 timers, you can use different circuits, and yeah, so if you want some inspiration while I show you how to design the most basic circuit, you guys can look up Mohit Mohite on Instagram. I am actually going to share and walk you through the Instagram page because I absolutely feel very inspired every time I see him work on a new circuit. So this battery right now that I'm using is of I think 3.4 volts, and we're going to check the status of the battery. It's always a good idea to check the status of the battery or the voltage of the battery before you start. So I have a DMM. I'll show you how to do that as well. Again, the DMM is also super easily available at the nearest electrical shop that you have. And of course, it's always available online. Alright, so let's continue with this. And great. Oh, awesome. Right, so let's continue, and we're going to boil down the circuit to kind of fit the battery size so that we don't have to work extra to hold the battery in, so that the battery just stays there on its own, right? So there we go. Now, this is where our LED joints will come. All right, that's one end of the LED. It can be anode or cathode, both. I usually like to keep the positive end on the bottom because if you ever look at your battery, the positive end is wider, right? So it makes sense for the battery to just fit here, and you use wire to kind of hold it there, right? So it's nice to make small and neater circuits. when you're beginning with, instead of trying complicated stuff at the beginning, especially since I'm doing it on live stream, right? Great. So this is where my LED ends will come, and then there's going to be my LED over here, right? And the negative end is going to come here and clasp, right? So there again, LED. So this is the negative end on top. Again, there's going to be an LED, and the negative end is going to come here. All right. So for this, I'm going to be using through hole LEDs. So it should be fairly easy to follow now. All right, so let's get started, right? I'll show you the spool of wire that I use since I do this a lot. I usually get it in bulk. So, all right. Here's the spool of wire that I have. I usually buy it by weight. So it's I use it for almost, it goes on for 6 months at least. So that's how I buy it. So let's cut down a wire. Now, because it's a big spool, I'm going to cut out a random size of wire so that it's easier for me to cut it down to smaller pieces. Just to put one of the ends, and there we go. Right, so wire, I'm going to cut out a random piece before I cut it down to the actual size. All right, so there we go. I'm going to keep this accessible so that in case I need more wire, I have it available. Alrighty. Okay, so now again, I'm going to take out my sticky knot, put it down because I'll need it to not move when I'm cutting the wires, right? So this is my first strip of wire, right? I'm matching it, and there we go. I'm going to cut it. Now you can always fold the wire too, but the thing is, if you fold it, let's say I take this wire and I fold it here. After you cut it, like after you cut this part, first of all, you're going to have to straighten the bend. Second of all, the size is never going to be accurate if you do that. So it's always a much better idea to just put it on paper and cut the exact length. If you're still uncomfortable with it, it's a good idea to just grab permanent marker and put it down, cut, make a mark there and cut it. Okay, great. So now I've got 2 wires cut out, and I'm going to do the same. So now you see there's a bend. So it's a good idea since there's a bend here. There's so much expectation. All right. So you see there's a bend here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my other plier, which I said we'll be using for this, and just straighten it out so that my size is accurate, right? Just a little press and it should be good. There we go. Nice and straight. All right. So since I know it's going to be a square, I might as well just cut the same length over and over again. Yeah, there we go. And that's all. So we're going to start with just 4 wire pieces in the starting. We won't cut the part for the back of the circuit. You'll understand why once we start soldering the LEDs, right? We want to minimize the wastage while we're doing this too. So we're going to see how much of the LED we can use. All right. So okay, let's start by soldering the joints together. All right. So you want to have your flux right here. It's always a good idea to just dip your flux in the gel since it's a lot harder to use a brush. We will use a brush for the LEDs though. Okay, so it's a good idea. There we go. Just gonna arrange it there. Now we're going to use the tweezers to kind of make sure that things stay in place, right? And we can see that they're not very good size. So there we go. So since my soldering gun is already heated, this should be a fairly fast process. All right. So you can see there's a lot of metal on my soldering gun already. So what I'm going to do is I have a cotton pad with water here. Right here. So you can see, can you see it? No, you can't see it. There we go. Can you see it? Oh, okay, there you go. There's a cotton pad with water on it. And you can see always a good idea to kind of clean it in your soldering iron before starting out. So there you go. You can see the tip is much shinier now. All right. So we're going to start with the metal with this metal already has a little bit of flux in it. But because it's brass wire that's right out from the fabricator's place, it's always a good idea to put some flux. All right. So we're going to just, there, right? And I'm gonna hold it down, and there we go. So remember, the wires are going to start heating up, so you might want to be a little careful with handling it. Okay, I'm gonna hold it down again and make sure it's soldered. Great, so that joint is soldered. I'm going to start with the next joint. Once all your joints are a little soldered in a even in a little vague way, it's okay to go back and retouch them to make them really hold them together. Right, so now this is good, nice and smooth. There you go. That's our last joint. There go. And last one, you can use your pliers to straighten it out and really, make sure that they're really in the right shape and they're straight and it's really a square. But my idea today is to really demonstrate the entire circuit. So I'm gonna quickly solder the last joint. Great. So I think this joint, the first joint I did, I'm not really happy with it. So I'm gonna just make sure it's much more stable. I'm just gonna touch it again and make sure the joint is nice and stable. All right. So quick poll time. What color LEDs do we want to use? So I can show you. We have green, yellow, blue, red, and white. Any preferences? What LED color you want the square to be? Okay, great question. So I'm not sure what you mean by batter, but I'm assuming you're asking this base. So you can join any of it. Make sure that the second one is of course reversed. But because this is the base, and I know my battery usually has a bigger base, I keep the anode at the bottom and cathode at the top. And so the gel that I dipped my wire in is called flux. If you just Google it or if you look up on Amazon, you'll see a lot of different fluxes available. They're cheap, they're very easily available even at your nearest hardware and electrical store, and they're used to solder things in place. So your metal might not stick to the other metal immediately. So the flux really helps in doing that. This metal already is a high flux metal, so it already has some flux in it. But I always use more because this wire is right out from the fabricator's place, and it usually needs a lot of flux to start. Blue, 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 blue. Okay, so we're having a blue is winning right now. So we've got 3 blues and 2 reds. Any other suggestions? No green, no yellow. Okay. So let's wait for another minute if we can have a tiebreaker. And we've got 3 red and 3 blue. If I don't get any more words, we're gonna have 2 edges, which is gonna be red, and 2 edges blue. Does that sound fair? Since we've got 3 red and 3 blue, and blue is winning. So I'm gonna keep an eye out, but I'm gonna take out 2 each anyway, since that's the popular offering. So there we go. These are my blue LEDs. Again, when you're starting off, it's always a good idea to check whether the LED is working. I'll show you how to do that. Usually, if you have a much more, I don't know, higher end model of the DMM, you can check it directly via that. But another good way to check is just take your battery, right? There you go. Just take a battery and so I'm sure I'll just walk you through the process of identifying the anode and cathode of the LED. So you can see the LED. Yep, you can. So the longer end is the positive end of the LED, and the shorter end is the negative end. In case you end up cutting the LEDs and you're still not sure whether what end is what, just look closely at your LED. I'm just waiting for it to focus. And you see there's a little cut here, right? That little cut is always on the positive side of the LED. Okay, so in case you end up cutting your legs, which we will be doing, and it desolders, this is a great way to check. You'll see there's a little cut on the LED right here. And that's how you know that's the positive end. All right, I just threw my LED. Okay, so there we go. So now we know that we are going to make the base positive. So let's start by just placing them. So first, let's check whether the LED is working. So the blue LED, one blue LED is working. Another blue LED is working. And we have 3 working blue LEDs, but we don't need 3. So I'm just going to leave a spare LED right here. And just keep a tab on the words just in case people decide to use another color soon. And there we go, we have the red LEDs right here. So if you want to buy LEDs, again, Amazon has some great options, but if you're looking for an electrical shop, Electronics Comp and Robo.in in India are some good options, some local online vendors. Rest of the world, I think Amazon works great, but I will try and look into vendors if you have any requests for any particular country. Right, so let's check our red LED. Our one red LED works, and our second red LED works. So great, we've got all the LEDs working. Awesome. So let's just align them now. Right, so we're gonna keep, there we go, there's one positive LED. Red. Now, see which color this is. Red again, keep it here. Blue, and this LED isn't working. Okay. This LED is working. Great. So blue. Awesome. So now we've got our LEDs aligned. We're just going to quickly solder the positive parts. So now remember the LED again. This is an older set, and regardless of how old the set is, it's always a good idea to put flux, because otherwise you're going to end up heating it, and then if it does not stick, you're going to have to wait longer to apply the flux and then get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my flux, I'm going to put my soldering gun and melt it a little so that I get some on my brush, and I'm just going to put it on the LEDs. Alrighty, we're almost through. I'm just gonna quickly go off air and connect my charger. Alright. Just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna make sure my laptop does not shut down. Alright, great. So let's continue. Let's solder our LEDs in place now. Okay. There. Okay. Now, how the distance of the LED? It's completely your call. How artistic you want it to be, what your entire goal is. I'm going to leave enough out because again, I'm doing it on live stream and I don't really want to sit and correct the position. So I'm going to leave enough of it out for me to be able to make changes later if I want to. Right. So there we go. Just hold a soldering joint there and it should just connect. There we go. That's a good joint. Next LED. Right, just take some metal. Okay. Sorry, I understand my hand completely hit that. Okay. Last LED again. Easy way to find out which one's positive. There's a cut on the left side, so I'm going to go and solder the left side. Now remember, I'm not really taking much of an artistic care here, so it's going to look slightly ugly. And okay, those are some sturdy joints we've got there for our positive ends. Now, to make sure that all our LEDs are rightly connected, let's just put the battery in and check if everything gets turned on the right way. I'm just going to center all our negative ends to the center. Put the battery in, let the positive ends connect, and just press down slowly. So not everyone's turning on. I think this one's connected. Okay, no, everything is turning on. Okay, so everything's turning on. So that means they're correctly connected, the anodes are right. And now what we're going to do is now we want to connect wires from this end, right? And make a kind of a pyramid right here. Now, here's the creative part. So you can put beads right here as well, but since now I have the basic structure ready, I'm going to play around with the beads right here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick some beads. Okay, so here are the selections available. Do you guys have a choice? We have two shades of green, a nice light green and a dark green here. I understand the shades aren't very richly visible in the stream, but there you go. Okay, there are these two greens and then there is black and white. Preferences. I see a great question in the chat. By the time you guys decide the bead color, I'm going to take the question. So the answer to this is no, you do not need solder if you're using copper tape. You can do a total solderless circuit if you're using copper tape. But if you do have soldering, if you can still solder it upon the copper tape, it's great. It'll create a more sturdy circuit. And no, if you're using just copper tape, you do not need the flux gel or the flux liquid. If you have access to the flux liquid, I would definitely encourage you to use that instead. And that's some of the suggestions. If we have time in the end, I would love to demonstrate a copper tape socket as well, but we have 20 minutes on the clock and I really want to not overflow into the next session. Yes, just tape, and of course you will want LEDs and a battery. I honestly wish I could demonstrate it now. So if you want to see how I use copper tape for stained glass art, and how stained glass art works is basically you cut glass, you copper tape it, and then you solder all the pieces together. So copper tape essentially with flux is super solderable and it's a lot easier to work with. So let's say you can't find a conductive wire, it's a great idea to just copper tape it and put some soldering on it. So another thing that I usually do is I worked with stained glass on rings and I could never find the correct metal for the ring. So what I did is I copper taped the ring. I usually do this. I copper tape the ring and then I solder it with the glass pieces. And I make sure it's nice and tight so nothing falls off. And the metal also stays. So if you make sure it's a little rough, the metal also stays in nice and tight. Well, because the purpose of this is not going to be a pendant. I'm not going to be wearing this or make sure if someone's wearing it, if I do end up wearing it, it's going to be on at least 2 layers of clothes, right? So, but yeah, if you're definitely, and the another thing is because I'm demonstrating it on live stream, I want the metal to melt quickly, right? And solder on quickly. And it's a lot easier to do that. But yeah, if you're ever using it properly, if it's going to touch the skin too much, definitely use lead free. That's a great call. Okay. Alright, so the choice is black and white. So we're going to use black and white. Great job, you guys. I mean, great design minds I've got here. Such great suggestions. Okay, so there we go. There are my white beads. And there's my black bead. Alright, I've got the beads out. So now let's start cutting our pyramid wires, right? So now this is the part where there is a little more artistic decision required on your end. You can decide, you can play around and see what you really want to do. So at this point, if you guys want to just quickly end the circuit, you guys can just solder all the anodes, the cathodes here together and just place the battery. But we are of course trying to make it artistic, so we're going to take wire, and there we go. So now I know that I need the wire to come at this point and stop, right? I want to solder it to the negative point of the LED right here and stop right at the center to make it like a star shape thing, and my bead is going to come right in the center. Now, because I know there's going to be a bead, I know it's going to take up a little space, right? As soon as I put a bead inside the wire and I try to press it down, there's going to be a slight curve that's going to happen. So I want to account for that as well. So that's how I'm going to measure my wire, right? So it's going to be tiny pieces, right? And this is the part where tweezers are really going to come in handy, because it's going to be very difficult for you to hold the wire on top and solder it, because this thing gets heat. It's going to heat very fast. Let's say if I was using this entire length of the wire and I was soldering this end, it still wouldn't matter, because by the time the entire length of the wire got heated, I would have soldered it. Because they're really tiny pieces, a tweezer is always going to be super, super handy. All right, so let's quickly cut down the 4 pieces. So we've got first piece, and I'm going to go and take up slightly longer pieces so that I don't have to struggle in front of the camera. But a nice artistic viewpoint and some consideration would be nice in case you're making this yourself. Oh. All right. Great. So let's start by finding our tweezers. There we go. All right. And we're gonna have our metal ready, and we're gonna just take some more flux and brush it over our metals. And there we go. And yes, it's a messy task. So also, if you're getting flux on your metal, on your tools, definitely make sure that you wipe it clean, because it really rusts them and, really shortens their life. Especially if you're using regular pliers and not your heavy duty pliers, right? We can keep this. Another good way to put flux is these earbuds. They're nicer to use, but again, they cause a lot of waste. So wherever possible, if it's not a very tiny joint or a very sensitive joint, I use brush. Great, let's get started. So our LEDs already have flux, but in case they don't stick immediately, I'm going to put more flux. All right, so let's take the wire, take some metal, and solder it right here. You can see it's a way more tedious task than the other LED was, than the other pieces were. So, which is why it's always nice to have a tweezer. Make sure that the uh, center points overlap, right? So there you go. All right, this was much nicer, much quicker. Great, that means the flux was better here. And take some more metal. So another way to go about it, in case you do not have access to tweezers or you don't want to bother with tweezers, is you make the joint, the flat joint on the surface first, and then move on to the LED part. All right, so the joints seem strong enough. I'm not very happy with them, but we're going to continue for what it's worth. Yep, that's exactly what I meant. So if I wanted to end the circuit right there, I could have soldered all the negative ends together and just clipped them together. And yes, you can make it them purely from LEDs as well. Just solder the LEDs in different shapes and with different circuits, ICs. Absolutely. But the metal helps add sturdity. You can control the structure. You can make more 3D shapes like a cube. Again, if I'm going to finish this very quickly, and then I'm going to walk you through some of my favorite artists who make electronic art, and they're really, really creative with it and really push its boundaries. So let's finish this very quickly. All right. So I'm just going to check the joints, make sure that I can play around with them. So now I'm going to add the beads, right? So I'm going to add my first bead here. My black bead here, alternately. There we go. Again, white bead. Again, I'm not very happy with the joints, which is why I'm being super careful. This is a good point for you to just fold in the negative bits that you have soldered, so you have less obstacles while you're putting in the beads. So there you go. Over here also I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold in the negative bit. Go. And right here as well. And the last wire. So we're gonna there you go. And the last bead. Awesome. Okay, so now we've got the basic structure perfectly ready, and I'm just gonna solder the bits in the center and really complete the entire thing. So it's a good idea to take two wires at a time. Extend the metal a little more. Okay. At this point, it's probably a good idea to just check if your joints are working. If not, you can always add more flux at this point, right? So now my two joints are soldered very easily. I'm gonna get the third one in and see if it fits properly. Awesome, there we go. And my last joint, it's a little extended, which is fine. I can cut it later, so I'm not going to bend it. There we go. Now it's a good idea to take some metal and make sure it's really soldered on all ends, because otherwise it's going to be kind of useless. Alrighty, I think this is kind of good to go. I can see now this is a good idea. This is a good time to check with your digital multimeter whether all your joints are connected. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and test my circuit. So there you go. Let's see if it works. The beads are kind of a hassle. And it kind of works. The blue LEDs need more shorting, so we're going to move them apart. Alright, so the blue LEDs obviously need more voltage. But let's see if we can work with that. Alright, so I guess the blue LEDs need more voltage. That means their power rating is slightly different. But in any case, your circuit is basically working, right? Now, this is a good time to basically cut off these extra wires that you have left out, alright? And really make the most of the artistic endeavor, right? And you can see that maybe the beads on this end might have looked better. So this is the point where you can really, play around with the circuit. And let's see if I can get the blue LEDs to turn on. Well, that's funny, to say the least. Yep, so the blue LEDs definitely have a different rating. So this is a good time if you want to replace the LEDs and use red LEDs. Another good technique here is instead of soldering, if you want to, wrap the LED, you can definitely do that as well. I'll show you how to do that. So let's take another LED and see how that works, right? So I'm going to take again the positive end will go down at the bottom. All right. And at this point, you can just wrap it around to make sure it's shorted. There you go. And the negative end can come at the top and make sure it's shorted again. So let's see if this works. This is fun. And yep, so the green LED is trying to turn on, but basically that means the power rating is a little different, which is why it's not turning on at the same time. So it's a good idea to check whether all your power ratings are the same for all. And there we go. Right? Alright, so that's probably not the best example of a circuit, but a cleaner circuit here is this. Again, this is the same thing that I've done. There's a positive base, that is all your positive ends are connected below, and all your negative ends are at the top. So there we go. We can power this one up and you can see this, right? So one circuit works, the B circuit does not work very properly. But thank you, Smart Mind. I really hope you guys follow this along when you get the supplies. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen and show you some of my favorite artists when it comes to electronic art. So let me pull them out. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I'm so glad you guys think so, but I know it wasn't the smoothest way to go about it. There you go. So that. Let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, so this is Mohit Bohite. I absolutely love his design. So you can see what he is doing right here. He makes these IC based designs with circuits. All right, and the next artist that I really like to follow is not that one. Sorry. This is another artist who makes amazing electronic sculptures and keeps experimenting with these pendants. I think he also has an Instructable posted regarding the same thing. Basically the LED pendant that we just made. I think he made snowflakes recently too. There you go. See, these are the kind of artwork that you can really make with a little bit of 3D printed adding to the same circuit that we tried. Alrighty. Okay, so it's 1 minute until the next workshop. So I'm going to let you guys go. In case I didn't introduce myself, I'm a brand new coach at MLH, and this is my second live stream. And I'm so glad you could join. Sure, you want me to share their profiles? I can do that. Let me quickly grab it off Instagram and share it. There you go. And the earlier one was. There you go. So these are the two artists that I really follow. A great platform to check out these hardware sculptures is Hackday, hackday.io. Definitely check that out. It's a great place to see how people build different circuits. Thank you so much. Really, I mean, I understand it was a little rough, but yeah, I mean, it's slightly difficult when you go on live stream. But awesome, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna let you guys go. If you guys want to get in touch, that's my Twitter handle. That's also my Instagram handle. In case you want to see my artwork, it's Instagram at Frenzy Works. Let me quickly share that as well. This is where my artwork goes. Okay, so I'm gonna end the broadcast now because the next sponsor session is right about to start. Do join it. I honestly hope you learned something. I honestly hope this really opened your mind to a new way to look at electronics and hardware. Okay, bye-bye. Feel free to hit me up on any of the social media channels that I mentioned. Bye, you guys.